Good morning. Today on Spotlight, the marketing campaign and strategy to grow Michigan's population. Is it working? And if so, what's the fastest growing area? How do we retain our brightest and best talent? And what's our best selling point for attracting those living outside the state to the Great Lakes state? We'll ask Hilary Doe, Chief Growth Officer for the state of Michigan. It's Sunday, June the 1st. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. Hilary Doe, welcome back to Spotlight. You're doing okay?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
It's certainly our pleasure. Okay, you were on this program about a year or so ago. What's the headline today different than what was last time?
Well, I think the thing we should be most proud of is that we're seeing real growth. And that's really exciting for Michiganders. Not only did we see, growth in the census, we obviously saw growth in the city of Detroit in terms of our population.
Right.
I think most importantly, our young adult population across our state is accelerating faster than 45 other states. We're in the top 5 now. 65% of Michigan counties grew last year. So there's really a lot to celebrate, and it's the direct result of, thousands of Michiganders coming together to work on this project.
What do you attribute this growth to? Your title is Chief Growth Officer.
That's right.
You were the first one in the United States to have that title. First of all, before you answer that question, are there any others yet?
There are other states who followed in terms of starting marketing campaigns to help drive talent to their states and taking on initiatives, but no chief growth officers yet. I'm still holding that title by myself.
All right. Very good. What do you attribute this growth to?
Well, there's a few different things. When people make decisions about where they're going to live or move to, it obviously includes things like jobs, and we've seen really fast-growing sectors here in our state. Our clean energy job sector is growing faster than any other states in the nation, for example. We have the second fastest-growing startup ecosystem in the country, so we have strong economic growth. That's certainly helping. We also launched really intentional marketing efforts, and we've seen 40,000 people come through those marketing efforts saying they want to live and work right here in Michigan, which has definitely had an impact. And there's been really strategic, place-based investments as well. Historic investment in housing, for example, which we know is going to be critical to help keep prices affordable, keep cost of living where we need it to be, and help folks find great places to live across our state.
Sure. You have a program, and make sure that I'm calling it right. It's the Make Michigan Home.
Yep.
And there's a grant involved with that, I think $500,000. Talk to us about that program and how that fits into this overall big goal that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as part of this work, we've talked to over 20,000 Michiganders and folks across our state. And what we learned, of course, is that what it's going to take the UP to grow will be different than the strategy for Detroit or the strategy for Grand Rapids.
It's going to take a lot of warm coats for the UP to grow. I'm just
or
kidding,
people who love to ski.
Right.
So all to say, each of those strategies should be different and tailored to their local communities. So Make My Home is a first-in-the-nation style program. No one's ever launched one like it. And what it allows communities to do is apply with really unique, tailored talent retention and attraction programs, saying who they need to retain or attract, as specific as teachers or nurses, or as general as the recent grads from our local university. And we're helping them fund benefits to help those folks choose to stay in their communities. Everything from down payments on homes to student loan forgiveness to welcome programs in their communities.
And this is the second year of that program, I believe?
We ran a pilot in the fall to grant recipients and received so much interest that we have decided to lean into the program and do this second round. We just received all those applications at the beginning of the month, and we intend to announce the winners of this round at the end of this month.
Yeah. We certainly know about all of the federal cuts. We have a significant number of federal workers. I don't know exactly how many, you may know that figure, here in Michigan. How has that impacted you trying to grow this state when people are getting laid off?
Yeah, we do have a number of federal workers, and obviously this has affected folks across the country.
Sure.
As part of our work, we've actually doubled down on some of our marketing efforts to make sure that those folks who've been impacted can get connected to one of the 140,000 open jobs across our state. As part of that strong economic growth, Michigan has really diverse across sectors job growth, and we do currently have, like I said, over 140,000 open jobs. So we launched something called the Michigan Career Portal. Anyone can can visit that. You can go to buchananmichigan.org and check it out, or themichiganlife.org, and it helps folks, make those transitions into a potential new role while keeping them right here in our state, or maybe even attracting them to a new Michigan community.
When you're trying to sell this state, what's your best pitch? What is it that seems to attract people, one, to stay here, especially young people who may have just graduated from one of our great universities and are getting offers from across the country, as well as people who aren't currently in the state but are looking to relocate?
Yeah. I think the beautiful thing that we have going for us here in Michigan is a combination of a few factors. We have incredible natural beauty and really, truly great, fast-growing economic opportunity, like I was mentioning. And the combination of those things plus the cost of living means that for a young person, they can have a great job in a great field, in a beautiful place, and still afford a home. And that, frankly, just isn't possible in lots of parts of the country. We did polling of 6,000 folks across the country, asking them what they were looking for in a place to call home. The access to ownership of a house someday
and
was
I
the
just
number
recently,
one.
I don't mean to interrupt you, I just recently heard a report on radio that said I think Detroit and Flint are the most affordable cities in America to buy a home.
Yeah, and frankly, across the whole state, we have the 4th lowest home prices in the country. So we need to keep working hard. That's why we're targeting getting 115,000 new units across our state online to make sure that those prices don't skyrocket, that we keep costs low, that we make sure Michiganders who are here can, access homes. But at the same time, we know that that's a real benefit to the young folks graduating who might want to stay, to young families who might be looking for a place to call home. And that, cost of living, in addition to strong economic opportunity and real natural beauty that really can't be topped, is the pitch for Michigan.
And of course, it would help if interest rates came down, but you aren't in charge of that. All right, we're going to take a quick little break. We'll come right back with Hilary Doe, Chief Growth Officer for this great state of Michigan. We'll be right back. Stay with us. What's the fastest growing section of the state of Michigan?
That's a great question. There's about 3 different regions that I think are worth talking about here. One is the northern Michigan area, which we've seen fast growth, especially among remote workers in this post-COVID era where folks can live in beautiful places. We've seen real growth there.
Northern section of the Lower Peninsula?
Yeah, so like the Traverse City area, for example, we've seen some fast growth per capita. Those are some of the fastest growing counties in the state. The west side of the state traditionally has been a really strong growth place because
Grand Rapids, that area.
Because of some booming opportunity. But I will mention that among our young adult population, the Detroit metro area, the broader Detroit area, is one of the fastest growing in the state, in part because of our fast growing tech jobs and that kind of startup ecosystem I mentioned, but also manufacturing jobs that have come online in the last handful of years, like in clean energy that I mentioned, and other sectors. We've seen semiconductor investment, things like that have really contributed to that young adult growth.
I know a lot of young people are coming to the city of Detroit. They want to be near the bars and the sports arenas and the restaurants, and they want walkability, something that Richard Florida talked about a long time ago when he was a keynote speaker at the Mackinac Policy Conference, when we were just starting these discussions about how to get Michigan to grow again. Is that what you're hearing from young people? That they don't want what people my age and their parents wanted, to get out and be able to have that 2- and 3-car garage?
Sure. Well, obviously there's going to be somewhere for everyone. I really do believe that. And when we work with Michigan communities, we help them think about, who they should target and what their growth strategy should be. But to your point, we absolutely do hear from young folks that what they're looking for is walkability, amenity-rich communities, and frankly, transit are all really important for them. And infrastructure investment is really important. So those are things we've definitely communicated with the legislature and are in conversation about. And reasons that programs like RAP, for example, which has been a placemaking program in our state, has been so helpful in retaining and attracting talent.
Mayor Duggan recently held a press conference, talked about the census growth and the fact that Detroit is indeed growing again, and kudos to him and his staff and so many others who have worked on that particular goal. When you talk to Mayor Duggan and others, and the governor, of course, who's your direct boss, what is it you're telling them in addition to what we already have, we need this, and this
Sure.
to continue this growth.
Yeah, so we are on a good trajectory, as I was mentioning, but it's really important to put our foot on the gas at this point. You know, now that we've seen a little bit of growth and some good trajectory, that means we're going in the right direction and we need to continue it. So some of the key things to continue investing in are ensuring that we can retain our entrepreneurs and that innovation ecosystem. That's going to be critical. 90+% of new jobs will come from small businesses and startups. We're a top 10 state for patents because of our great universities.
Really? Okay.
And we need to keep those folks here to scale those businesses here. That'll be critical for our growth. We need to keep making those investments we were just talking about in sort of walkability and amenity-rich communities, and building that housing that we've started working on and need to continue working on. And frankly, there are some other elements that we've worked hard on, like ensuring folks get access to community college and childcare and pre-K rather, because post-secondary attainment is going to be critical long-term to retaining our talent and attracting folks from across the country to join us here in Michigan.
Would you say it's safe to say that as goes Detroit, the largest city in the state,
Yeah.
goes Michigan, or is that too much of a stretch?
No, it's not too much of a stretch. I think it's absolutely critical that we make sure that Detroit's growth plan is strong and that we're on the right trajectory in the city of Detroit. And we'll see the state as well benefit from that. We saw it with the draft, for example, when all eyes are on
NFL
Detroit.
draft.
Yeah, when all eyes are on Detroit and we continue to have positive perceptions around our great city. We also, really put a spotlight on the whole state and raise awareness and perception of our great state as well. So I think that's absolutely right and fair.
Talk about your personal experience, because you and your family live in Detroit.
We do. We live on the east side of Detroit, and I'm a boomerang. I grew up in Monroe County, so south of Detroit, and we left the state for a little while, but I was just talking to you. I met my husband on the East Coast, brought him back, had our two kids.
He was originally from grew up in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I was joking that I grew the state with at least one, brought him back. But we have
Check that box.
exactly.
Okay.
But we have our kids and we live right in the city. And I mean, even more important maybe than my direct personal experience, this entire growth effort has been based on our public engagement work, and I mean that in a real way. We've sat in rooms with hundreds of different rooms with thousands and thousands of Michiganders, and listening to those folks about what they love about their communities and what's between folks in building their futures here is what the blueprint for our state is built on. The blueprint for our growth is a reflection of those conversations, and I think that's the only way we win.
Okay, we need to take one more break. We'll come right back. I want to talk a little bit about Pure Michigan.
Awesome.
Is that okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, we'll be right back. Stay with us. What is the most popular talent in Michigan right now?
Do you mean sector or industry?
I mean more in terms of job. Is there a particular job area that seems to be growing more than others that you're seeing a trend in?
Yeah. There's a few different fast-growing industries in our state. I mentioned our really fast-growing startup ecosystem. I wouldn't want to skip that. That's critically important. And again, second fastest growing in the country. We're also seeing fast growth in some sort of high-tech sectors, like, again, semiconductors, which has been really interesting.
We know that a lot of people got laid off, which we talked about earlier, because of all the downsizing in terms of the federal government. Are there areas in which there are some federal opportunities to grow? Like, first that comes to mind is Selfridge Air National Guard Base, in which the governor and President Trump and Speaker Hall stood out front and said, hey, look, here's great news about some new jets that are coming to air.
Absolutely. There'll be jobs as a result of that really exciting announcement. And frankly, there are also about 2,000 new state jobs in the last, I think, about month or 2 months that have been added. Maybe it's a little longer than that, but we've seen in our last jobs report some growth.
Is defense a growth area, especially with what appears to be going through Congress? As we sit here, the president's budget plan with the House, but it's going to the Senate, but he certainly wants to grow defense.
I'm so happy you mentioned it specifically because it is. Defense and aerospace are two of the fastest growing industries in those kind of like high-tech industries in the state. I think we have 4,000 companies in defense and aerospace in some way, maybe 600 in just aerospace alone. And yeah, those are great jobs in everything from cybersecurity and engineering to, of course, all the other roles that are required in each of those companies, from marketing to, everything else. And so it's a really important, fast-growing sector, and one that, again, the point about economic diversity will be resilient for the next, foreseeable future.
How well is Pure Michigan serving this state?
Yeah.
Or is it, because it has had its critics through the year, and critics would say, we're just throwing a lot of marketing money to a campaign, but it's not really producing for this state. Agree or disagree?
I disagree. Travel and tourism is a really important industry for our state and for lots of different parts of our state in particular. Over 300,000 people in our state are in that industry. And the Pure Michigan campaign itself is arguably the most successful of its kind in travel and tourism of any state in the nation. We're walking into our 20th year here. So I think, it's really done its job. And it's also been a rallying cry for people across our state, to celebrate Michigan. What I would underscore, though, is that it's a piece of our broader marketing puzzle. We have a talent campaign called You Can in Michigan that those 40,000 folks have come through, interested in living and working in our state. The Pure Michigan campaign as well. And, folks can choose. It starts with a visit. Folks can visit our great state, move into our, marketing around talent and choose to come and live here, for example, or learn about how to start a business here in our state through our different marketing efforts.
Ms. Doe, I recently went to the annual LaSalle Luncheon, a great organization in Southwest Detroit, and I was waiting for my car outside at the end of it, and a gentleman came up to me and he said, everybody always talks about Southwest Detroit being the fastest growing neighborhood in the city of Detroit and being a heavily Hispanic neighborhood, businesses, certainly a growth area. He said, what people don't talk about is that Hispanics are the only, and hopefully I'm quoting him right, he said, that population grew in every county of Michigan, but I think two. And he said, why don't you all talk more about that? Meaning we in the media. True or false, do you know that is indeed, it's not just Southwest Detroit that Hispanics are moving into in the Latino population all across the state, and he said, including the UP.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I know, for example, there are really fast-growing Latinx communities on the west side of the state, for example. So I have no reason to believe that's not the case. International migration has always been a really important part of Michigan's growth story. And right now, what's so great about what's happening is that we're not just seeing that growth, we're also seeing improvement year over year consistently in our domestic migration numbers. So more folks moving into our state, fewer moving out, and just really healthy, like I mentioned, young adult population numbers. So across the board, really positive trends and signs for communities across our state.
We've talked about all this good news. Let's do the flip side.
Yeah.
What's our biggest challenge? What works against Michigan as of right now that we as a state have to work on to be able to change the dynamic? Yeah,
there's two things. There's the lighthearted answer, which is weather. When I first started this role, everyone said, what are you going to do about the weather?
Right. We get all 4 seasons in 1 week.
Yeah, but I always say, we have the second most ski hills, right? So I don't think it's that bad. And more, we're actually seeing folks in warmer weather parts of our state come to Michigan because it's gotten too warm, for example, or they're seeing extreme weather or what have you. So who knows on that front? But more seriously, of course, everybody is dealing with more uncertainty right now in the economy, things with tariffs, what have you. And as that happens, I think to ensure that Michigan continues on our growth trajectory, we need to control the controllables. And those include, like I've been mentioning, things like continuing to invest in our small businesses and our startup ecosystem. Those are always going to be critical, and they're things we can control. They're growing at a clip. Michigan's leading there. Leaning into those resilient industries, like you mentioned, with defense, some of our utilities, things like that, like clean energy that have been fast growing. And continuing to make sure that we're wrapping our arms around this talent work and continuing to do it. I know I might be biased in that regard, but you remember the early 2010s, for example, when we were in a tough spot from a population
2008,
perspective.
2009, tough year.
And you get stock price and median income and job growth growth back faster than you'll get population growth back. So it really matters that we continue on this nice, positive, up and to the right trajectory. And I think we can do that with programs like Make My Home. And it's why we're leaning so hard into our marketing work, our policy work on this growth initiative.
All right, final question. By the time Governor Whitmer ends her last term in office, what do you want the headline to be? Because they've already started people running for the job that she can no longer run for. And so there's going to be lots of debates, partisan debates, Democrats and Republicans, evaluating what kind of job she did and what the future of Michigan could be. But as the first and only state growth officer in the country, what do you want that headline to be when she says, bye-bye, Michigan, I'm done as executive?
Yeah, I think that from my perspective and my area of work, the headline will be that growth was a group project and it worked. Tens of thousands of Michiganders poured into this. It's the foundation of our economic resilience for the long term for communities across our state, rural communities, our cities. And as long as we all keep leaning in together, we're already starting to see the results faster than anyone expected that we would. And I think we will, as long as we keep hanging in together.
What do you want to do next? You ever want to get into political life in terms of being a candidate?
Maybe I'll be your
yourself?
co-host, Chuck. I'm going to hang out here with you.
Maybe you could just have the whole show and I'll go ahead and retire. Hilary Doe, we never know what's coming around the corner. You're awfully quick. Hilary Doe, thanks so much for coming in. It's certainly a pleasure talking with you. Best